I'm going to do something today that I very rarely do, and that is to respond direct to my comments on my channel. And the reason why I'm doing this, and may do it on a regular basis, is that some people raise some interesting responses, I guess. And I do cherish the fact that people on my channel engage in conversations, sometimes meaningful, sometimes not, but nevertheless are engaging with each other to have a discussion about the issues that matter to them, and instigated often by things I say and obviously things I post. So I'm going to look at one particular post that I noticed from my post that I made yesterday in relation to immigration, because I think it's important for us to be able to understand, number one, that it's okay to have an argument, it's okay to have a discussion, but it's not okay, and I'm not going to cite this necessarily in this particular response, but it's not okay to denigrate and put other people down. In fact, there was a post that that sexualized Rita Panahi the other day, and I deleted that post and I hid that person from my comment section. I'm not a fan, as you'll know, of Rita, but I won't stand for language and for implications which are sexualized either. And I won't stand for putting people down in the sort of way that that person did. So I deleted that person from my YouTube channel. And the same will apply. So I'm setting that rule now so that anybody who says something that is of a sexual nature and is denigrating somebody else, then they will be deleted. I also am interested in primarily things that you say, how you say it and what you say. And most of the time, I kind of just let things slide because I do believe that debate is an interesting part of the exercise and that we must have dialogue that is relatively constructive, even though we may not agree with what another person has to say. And I do like the fact that there are certain people on my channel whom disagree with me intensely. And I'll mention Stephen Kingsley as you being one of those dudes. But regardless of the fact that you don't like who I am and you don't like the things that I say, I do accept the fact that you have a right to say the things that you do about me and to criticize me, and that's fine. I can't say I'm happy with it, but I am accepting of the idea that there are lots of people who disagree with some of the issues that I raise and the way that I raise them and the statements that I make and the ideas that I present. I get all of that, so bring it on. I'm happy to hear what you have to say. I can't respond to I get hundreds and hundreds of comments, so I can't respond to every one of them, but I do read them. I want you to know that. And the one I'm going to refer to today is a comment from one of my favourite persons, and that's Danielle Cooper. And before I get to that, though, I just want people to know that tomorrow, on Tuesday, I'm doing a live feed with Nathan Ogilvie, the young bloke that I had on a few weeks back. He's back, and I think it'll be a fortnightly event with Nathan. And on Thursday, Avery Hilditch is back with me as well. So stay tuned for those particular live feeds. And I do need to say, before we do anything else, please subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. It doesn't cost you anything. I really appreciate it, and I love watching my channel grow, and you help me do just that. So I want to take us to Danielle Cooper's post, because Danielle says, Tony, I'm yet to hear what your solution would have been if you were in charge of Israel after October the 7th. Nor have I heard you speak out about the Rotherham saga, yet you say that you're for the most vulnerable in society. So I'm going to respond to the first part of that in particular, because I think, Daniel, you need to understand that I struggle with the notion that I had some ultimate power over a country to be able to influence anybody to do anything that I would like them to do. But I do need to say that I certainly would never have have isolated, encased, and incarcerated 1.5 million people. I wouldn't have done that in the first place. And secondly, it is possible to negotiate with certain groups of people, even though we might be diametrically opposed to them, about solutions that might fit with both populations. So the question really remains: would it have been possible to not have put a wall around Gaza? Would it have been possible to negotiate with the Palestinians about a better way of living for them, to have their own government, do their own thing, become their own country, and not have not the militarization and the imposition of the Israel IDF on the Gaza area? And the same thing applies to the West Bank. Is it unreasonable to expect Palestinians to live in peace with Israelis and the Jewish people? I believe it is, and I believe that perhaps the efforts were not made in that regard because both sides were so entrenched in their dislike of the other. But, it is possible to find ways to work through all of that. And maybe one of the ways to work through it is simply not to demonize one group of people over another group of people. And Daniela also asked me about the Rotherham saga. Well, I must confess, Danielle, that as someone suggested, that is a straw man argument. Elizabeth Cooper suggested that, and it is, because it has nothing to do with Gaza to start with. I don't know whether you were raising that, Daniela, as a separate issue, but when we think of the number of the Pakistanis that certainly were engaged in sexual assault of young girls, I think we should also look at that in the light, we should view it in a more wider spectrum. For example, should it mean then that we should also look at the Roman Catholic priesthood and the pedophilia that was perpetrated by the priests, the Roman Catholic priests, and other religious organisations as well, not just the Roman Catholics? Should we consider the fact that the hierarchy, the bishops within the Roman Catholic Church, also knew about what some of these priests were doing, but just moved them on? Should that sit in the same category as a group of men who just happened to be Pakistani doing what they did in Rotherham? Should we look at sexual abuse more broadly? So, should we look therefore at the Epstein files and the number of rich oligarchs that have been involved in the trafficking of young girls? So to bring up one situation because you want to, because it just involves Pakistanis, I find it's extremely disingenuous and inaccurate, because there are many other examples where children have been trafficked for sex. And it is disgusting. And certainly, when you're talking about, am I interested in the vulnerable people in our society? Of course I am. Whether it be, it doesn't matter the group that's assaulting the younger group. The point is that it's young people that are vulnerable. And certainly I will stand up for anybody who is targeted by a more powerful group of people, namely, and usually, disgustingly enough, men. And so, yeah, sure, I'm going to make a stand against that. And I don't know what argument you could provide that could justify what Roman Catholic priests do, for example. Maybe you can. Maybe it's a religious argument that I do not know about. But certainly, you should not draw that straw man sort of equivalency around all of that, because it's just damn inappropriate. And just going on, so you do also say, Danielle, I'm not trying to have a go at you, Danielle. I'm just saying that there are arguments that you make that, and these are sort of arguments that I find a little upsetting, because there are often varying ways of looking at a situation. And what I try to do on my side is to analyse what's happening, as I did around the immigration debate, as I will be doing around both the left and the right wing in politics. I'm not attempting to take sides in a sense. I'm trying to put forward arguments that I think are important and that are about protecting the most vulnerable people in our society. And Danielle goes on to say in another post, racism is made, I'll bring it up, racism is being made the issue by the left already when it's culture that is the concern. Unless you have been living in a bubble, the UK is a good example of what happens when you allow a culture that doesn't like ours to fester. Just 3 days ago, a 13-year-old cut up 2 other 13-year-olds in a London school while yelling, "That is good to great. That is God is great." And again, this is part of the problem. Anybody can choose one example and say this example covers everyone. If one Pakistani or one other race, Afghanistani, chooses to behave in a certain way, yet we could look to a number of white people who behave in the same way. We could look to, I think, the number of men, white men, who abuse and kill their partners, as I've said many, many times before. There are many ways of looking at the same situation. And you can cite these examples over and over. And when people do that, what they're trying to do, I think, and what Danielle's trying to do, is to justify her position around this by citing examples that fit with her version of race, without looking further and discovering that there are many other people who do exactly the same thing, that are not necessarily of a coloured skin, but who are white, who do what they are. I've said before that in a post actually last week, I made the point that the human race is a disgusting race. We do terrible things regardless of the colour of our skin. It's appalling what we do. It's also elevating to have a look sometimes at the positive things that we do. There are 2 sides to this story, not just one. But we are, unfortunately, regardless of race, we are a very violent species. And it's appalling. And my goal is to be able to discuss some of those appalling behaviours of all of the people in this world, to discuss all of this, no matter who you are. It is important to be able to talk about the issues as they stand, and that is my role. And there are many, many great conversations that we have in my comment section. I celebrate them. Please continue to have those discussions. In fact, I need to say that it's really important sometimes. There are people out there in the comment section who are far more informed than I am. And I do really appreciate your comments. So let me know what you think about all of that. I'm sure Danielle will respond. And so will Stephen Kingsley and others. But please remember to subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications because it does matter.